Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Home Service Headquarters. Today I'm super excited to be talking to Andy Bergmann from MavixCoaching.com, a coach specifically coaching on leadership and communication for home service businesses. I'm super excited to talk to him today about all things leadership, including how to scale your business and why do some leaders seem to be able to keep employees happy, engaged, and motivated, and other employers seem to lose their employees left and right. We're also going to dive into one of my favorite articles on MavixCoaching.com, 5 reasons you suck at being a leader, and Andy's going to dive into each and every one of those reasons. This is Home Service Headquarters. I'm excited for you to join us today. Let's dive in. Welcome, Andy. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today. How's it going?
Not too bad. I appreciate you reaching out and having me.
Yeah, for sure. I am very excited for our conversation today. And just to dive right in, you have such a cool journey of getting into leadership coaching. I'd love for you to just start by talking about your journey, going from working for a mechanical shop, plumbing, HVAC, all things mechanical, and then eventually getting into leadership development and coaching. How did that journey happen? And then why did you make that pivot? Was there a problem in the market that you saw firsthand that needed to be solved?
Well, I hope so. I don't think I don't think the journey was so much intentional, really. Yeah, I was working
Yeah.
at a mechanical and plumbing shop. I worked in the shop, worked in project management, and I ended up working in HR. And
Okay.
HR is such an interesting role because you get to see behind the scenes of the employees and you get to see behind the scenes of like leadership.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like almost right out of the gate, I would get frustrated because I would notice that people weren't being clear with each other. And so I got a little story for you that I tell to a lot of my clients. This is kind of where it started.
Sweet.
But I remember I got a call. I was new in HR. I get a call from an apprentice that was working out on the job site, and he wasn't uh, excited or he didn't like working with his foreman. So he called
Yeah.
me asking if he could go out to a new job site. So I asked him why, and he says, well, my foreman, he just micromanages me. He sucks to work with. He's not very much fun. He gets mad at us. And in my mind, I'm thinking, shut up. You're an apprentice. Go back to work. Um, but it wasn't long after that, then I got another call from another apprentice, same foreman. And I remember asking one of our other leaders, should we talk to this foreman? We'll call him Bob. And managers say, yeah, let's do it. So we bring him into the office and we're in the conference room, me on one side with another leader and Bob, the foreman, on the other side. And we're kind of awkward and nervous. Your heart rate starts going up, and like, how do you tell somebody nobody likes you, right? And so I don't remember what we said exactly, but essentially, hey, we've gotten feedback that the guys don't love working with you for these reasons, and we just wanted to tell you. And um, he looked at the other manager and said, how long have you guys known about this? And it's like easy on asking the hard questions, Um, I don't know, since you were a foreman, however we answered. And then I remember looking down at the table, wooden conference room table, because it's awkward. And I look up and he's looking at me, and this guy, he's crying. He has tears in his eyes, and he said, why didn't you guys tell me? And I remember thinking, this is stupid. Like when we can't give that kind of feedback or we can't have those kind of conversations, it doesn't benefit the company, it doesn't benefit the job, it doesn't benefit the employees, it doesn't benefit the foreman. But who does it benefit? Me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to be uncomfortable. I don't have to deal with the hard, awkward conversation. And so that's kind of where it really started. I can't say I knew much about anything, but I was in a cool position to start learning things and really learning about communication and what it looks like. Um, Communication breaks down for lots of different reasons.
Yep.
But the thing is, with communication, when it breaks down, it usually ends in contempt, and contempt leads to a broken relationship.
Yep.
So that's divorce, people quitting, partnerships breaking up, people mad at each other. Um, And so that's where it all started. And to answer your question is, do I think there's a market fit? I think so. Um, communication communication training is a difficult thing to sell,
Yep.
and to like really draw out an ROI. But I think there's a big need for it.
Totally. I mean, that story proves e- even just you were put in a position early on in your career where you early on would have benefited from someone like you going through even just a few basics of communication, how throwing things under the rug, not delaying hard conversations, just even a couple principles would have really helped. And I think you having that experience and those memories must have just solidified that in your mind and in your heart that like this is something that will benefit companies in the trades that have more than one employee.
Absolutely. And I just think if I was that guy on the other side of the table, I would be ticked.
Yep.
Like I wouldn't. I'd be like, "What else are you not telling me?"
Hmm.
So I don't blame
Yeah,
him.
there's a trust breakdown. Like, okay, so you were holding on to this piece of feedback. Is there have clients complained about me and you're not telling me because it's difficult? Does my boss not like me? Does the owner not like me? Like, at what's your threshold for being honest with me? Um,
Hmm.
Whereas if you just have an honest culture, like that's a very safe place to work, and that safety probably had to be built up over time with that foreman again after that is my guess.
Oh yeah, took some time.
Yeah, for sure. So you got like trial by fire for like 9 years at that mechanical or JRT mechanical, and then you had some time at a fencing company as well. When did you start seeing these communication and leadership principles really start to form in your mind in a way that you were like, I could actually start helping other people and train other people with this knowledge that I've taken from my years in HR and with employee development.
Yeah, I think when I went to the fence and deck company, I was hired on to do employee development, which is a fancy way to say I just did training. So I
Yep.
essentially did what I'm doing now for them, but just internally. And I think it really clicked for me when I understood how uncomfortable and how difficult it is for so many people to be clear. There's a lot of, it goes pretty deep. There's a lot of fears and there's a lot of worries on why we don't tell people the truth when we should. But if you have a little bit of training, a few tools, a little bit of practice, you can take that fear way down. I've heard a quote that I really like that says, "Fear is an inch deep, but a mile wide."
Hmm.
And so it looks vast and it looks scary, but a little bit of practice, it ain't so bad.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love that, and it's so cool that you got to develop that for a couple companies, see it firsthand, and now um, you're really helping companies probably in so many ways, but with employee retention, with just health of like the emotional culture of a company, and then just setting clear expectations and that culture of clear communication. That's also going to improve productivity, let alone all those retention and cultural benefits. So I'd love to just dive in and start picking your brain a little bit, giving some people some nuggets of what Andy is about and your coaching. So to start off, I'd love to ask what are some of the biggest challenges that leaders face when growing their field service business, possibly from their owner operator beginnings to growing it, adding a team, and then eventually growing at scale?
I think when a company is small, let's say you have 6 people, communication, I don't think, is typically the biggest pain point.
Hmm.
Everyone's maybe sharing the same office. You're seeing each other every day, working out of a small shop. I think at that point, the company has typically bigger problems, like they're trying to get work, they're developing their processes, um, trying to understand who their customer is, things like that. When I've seen it, it's anywhere between 20 and 50 employees. Again, this is just typically is when communication starts to become a bigger problem because the owner is now assigning other people to be leaders within the company, project managers, operations managers. And so if there's not a culture of the company where communication is required, a lot of companies I've noticed it's optional. You don't have to tell the truth. Nobody will get you in trouble. Nobody will hold you accountable. So if that culture isn't set, communication breakdowns start really, really small and they start to grow over time.
Yeah. So you found it's kind of, I think what you're describing is when a company gets past being a primarily flat organization where there's an owner and then basically everyone reports to the owner in one office, to all of a sudden you've grown past that. And now all of a sudden there's layers. There's an owner, and then there's managers, and then there's employees, and there's now multiple break points in conversation and communication.
Taylor, you said it better than I did. Perfect.
I repeat what you said.
No, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. So then probably that puts the onus on the owner, the original manager, to see that happening and say, hey, I'm growing past where I know and communicate with every employee. I need to be trained in this. But then is there also value in not just the owner, but even all the managers and the middle tier also being trained in communication?
Yeah, typically how I work with clients is starting at the top, owners and leadership team, and then middle managers, and then
Okay.
foremen on site. But what I think is important maybe for business owners to think about is it required for your project managers or for your leaders? Do they have to communicate clearly? Do you care? If they have somebody out in the field that is slacking, do you expect them to have that conversation or not? If you have a project manager that's a little bit of a wuss around negotiating change orders, do you care? And usually the reason why people don't do this is because they don't know how. They've never been trained. It's really hard to hold someone accountable if they've never been trained to do the thing. But I think it's something that a lot of business owners just don't think about.
Yep. And I think that's very fair. It's not, you might have started a business because you're very good at a specific trade. You're very, very good at HVAC. You're very, very good at plumbing. You've never had to be very, very good at communication before. So
Right.
no one's blaming you for not having the skill that's never been required before. But if all of a sudden your plumbing company goes through the roof and you have 20 employees, well, there's a new skill that you need to get good at and get good at fast if you want a healthy, long lasting, large organization.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the next question I want to ask is, as you've been coaching now leaders of these teams, what are some of the biggest differences that you see between the leaders who are really struggling and the leaders who ultimately succeed and have a very good culture in their business?
Yeah. I think communication, I don't think you ever achieve perfection. I don't know if you ever achieve mastering it. I think you learn it forever. But what I've noticed between the ones that really struggle and the ones that are really good is the ones that struggle, one of the biggest things that they're dealing with is, and this is hard to measure, but it's like drama, gossip, headaches, people quitting. It's more of like an emotional pain.
Hmm.
They're sick of dealing with people. And to me, it seems like 99% of problems in business typically come back to some sort of people issue. Um, Now, the ones that are successful, it's not that they don't have people issues. They do. But they have the skill to make that issue go away.
Hmm.
Whether it's coaching the person up, helping them, getting them out, providing them training, whatever it might be.
Yep.
But the ones that struggle, those issues linger. The longer they linger, the bigger the emotions get.
That you make a really good point there. The skill set of leadership does not make the people issues go away. We'll always have to deal with people. But I think your point, you said something very critical there. You have the skills to address it and either improve the issue or move on from a problem or an employee. But that requires you being okay with discomfort. I'm going to either have this uncomfortable conversation and up level this employee, or I'm going to have this uncomfortable conversation and this employee won't be employed anymore. But I can't just kick it under the rug and let the problem linger.
Yeah. I think we kick it down the road because it's more comfortable today. But you know how it goes. You avoid a conversation like that, and with time, it just gets worse.
Manifest, and then, oops, I just promoted this person I've had issues with for the last 2 years. I wonder if with a promotion, if it'll get better.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, okay. So you had this awesome article on your website, mavixcoaching.com. I think, is it /blog? I loved it. It's called The Uncomfortable Truth, Top 5 Reasons You Suck at Being a Leader. And I just want to dive into each of these reasons for just a minute or two with you. So you can just explain. Here are the top 5 reasons that you are not leading as effectively as you should be. So first one, you don't care enough. Explain that one to me.
When communication breaks down, let's say you get in a fight with somebody, whether it's your spouse or somebody at work, there's beef, there's tension. I think where the root of that comes from is we are protecting ourselves because we're scared we won't be loved or cared about. And so that applies to the work situation too. When you have a foreman that's fighting with an apprentice or there's some sort of issues, both sides, I think even subconsciously, they're protecting themselves. And what are we protecting? Am I worthy? Am I cared about? Do I fit in? Am I accepted? All those things. So how do we fix that? I think with communication, if not in every single conversation, but in each relationship, if we can develop the skill, it's a skill, to show people that we care, then that lessens that fear. We don't have to protect ourselves as much, because if me and Taylor are fighting, if I know deep down you care, that sets us up to communicate better. And so what does that look like practically for a project manager or a foreman? It's doing the little things day to day to show somebody that you care. Do you know if they have kids? Do you know what they like doing outside of work? Do you know if they want to buy a house? Do you know what they did last weekend? It's just little things.
I love that. Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts in the article was you just show interest in their life, and that can be game changing for someone trusting you and feeling respected by you. If your thought process is, hey, so do you know about their kids? Do you know about their hobbies? And you're like, I don't know, that doesn't affect their job. Well, that's an indicator that you really don't care about that person. You just care about them as a 9 to 5, get the job done. But they can feel that. They can feel like you care about their work, but not their life. And it's going to make a big difference.
When I was an HVAC project manager, we dealt with a lot of vendors. So you'd have a representative for the company that's giving you your material. And sometimes it'd be late and their lead times wouldn't be accurate. And so you get kind of irritated and you'd be quick to say kind of some outlandish things to them, or, be short with them. But I remember one of our vendors took us up to Alaska fishing for a week. And you get to know him. And you learn that he's just a guy. And so once you have a little bit of relationship with him, I wasn't maybe so quick to say super condescending stuff or super short with them, because I cared a little bit about the relationship. I actually knew the guy. So I think it would be the same with an internal working relationship.
100%. And I am hearing already some people listening saying, this is just the touchy feely stuff. This is not business. And that is not correct at all. Like, this directly translates into dollars and cents and the health of your business, because employees that leave after 18 months require turnover and new training and new employees. And that is the result of an unhealthy culture where people don't feel cared about. So it's not just this touchy-feely HR language that we're pushing. This is actually for the health of your business and will allow it to get to that next level. And I think as you get to that next level, if you do it with these 5 things that we're talking through, you're going to see your employees want to stick around, and they're going to care about the success of your business if you care about them, because all of a sudden they care about you too, and you care about this business. So magically, so do they.
Yeah. And if you think about it, let's say you have a foreman that doesn't have this skill. And I keep calling it a skill on purpose because it is something you can learn. And he has a crew of journeymen and apprentices on site that have no respect for him, and they don't really care. They don't feel like showing up on time. They don't feel like going above and beyond. They don't feel like staying late. They don't feel like working quicker. And I think those are the areas where you start losing money or the opportunity to make more money.
Yeah,
People
I mean,
care. They'll work way harder.
100%. If people care and if they know you care, they're showing up. They're showing up on time, and they're listening when you call them out in honesty and ask them to show up. So let's dive into the second one. Second reason you suck at being a leader: you don't demonstrate empathy. Can you explain what is empathy, and what does demonstrating empathy look like?
Yeah. We all have this deep need, I believe, to be understood. And so if I'm irritated at the office because I feel like they don't really care that we're driving 2 hours in traffic and working late and I'm not ever with my family, I know logically that I picked this job, but I just want the company to understand. I want them to understand my feelings. I want them to understand that it just kind of sucks. And so to me, that's what empathy is showing that you understand. I think where empathy is difficult is when we don't understand. So if somebody is going through an experience that we've never been through, empathy is a lot more difficult. But I do think that you can understand somebody and then you can show that you understand somebody or demonstrate it, like you said. And so the most tactical way I found that helps here is don't judge and don't disagree with people. So, for example, I one time had an apprentice come into my office. I was working in HR. He was a new guy, and he was irate that we didn't pay for 4th of July. He was just ticked off. Well, A, I didn't make the rule. 2, I got bigger problems. 3, your new apprentice showed up. You should go back to work. But what showing empathy to me looked like was just sitting there, listening to him, and trying to agree with everything that I could. So when he would say things like, I think that, 4th of July should be paid so we should spend time with our families, I would say, I think we should spend 4th of July with our families too. And so it's just these little things to show somebody you do understand them. That's all we want, is to be understood.
Yeah, I love what you said, and I think this goes back to it. You keep saying that it's a skill. It's something you can learn. It's not just what you feel, because you could have an emotional reaction of like, oh my gosh, like that's not correct, or it's not valid.
Yeah.
But if you develop the skill, you can still have the skill to overcome that emotion bubbling up inside of you and still assure them that what they're feeling is valid and that you understand. Like, even as you are like not fully understanding or agreeing on the inside, you can still show up and have that say the hard thing, which is actually, I hear you. I understand you. And yeah, this is what I agree with. That does actually make sense. I think we should spend time with our family as well, like assuring them that their thoughts are valid.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you can't pivot and change the company rules, it costs you $0 to make someone else feel heard.
Yep. Yeah, and I
All
think the
right.
worst thing you can do, wrote one more note there.
Yeah.
The worst thing with empathy is to provide a solution. So if somebody is mad about traffic and you respond, well, maybe you should leave 2 hours earlier or something, that's like the exact opposite of empathy, because you're not
Yes.
understanding their feeling. They're not looking for a solution a lot of times in those scenarios.
Don't solve a problem when someone just wants to be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Uncomfortable truth number 3: garbage communication skills. That is a reason that you suck at being a leader. Garbage communication skills. What is under that bucket?
I remember sitting in a meeting with a foreman that was struggling with some other leaders. And his few previous jobs hadn't been profitable. And a profitable job site has a lot of factors, and I don't think the foreman's just the only one. There's a lot of things that go into it. How it was bid, who was the general contractor, lots of things. But there was definitely there was a common theme that all of his, maybe not all of them, but many recent ones weren't profitable. And so we had brought him in to visit with him about it. And one of the other managers, who has a huge heart and is really nice, was saying things like, yeah, we've been kind of looking at your jobs, and it's important that, we need to make sure we're focusing on productivity and, how are things organized out there? And I'm giving you a really summarized version of like a 15-minute conversation. And what I eventually did is I jumped in and I said, hey, Mr. Foreman, I think what we're trying to tell you is your last 3 jobs haven't been profitable and they need to start being profitable. What do we need to do? And the other managers kind of looked at me. Dang. So garbage communication, I think, is just really, really unclear. Again, it's a skill that can be learned. I think what makes communication so difficult is we get really, really confused between our feelings and what is factual. And even facts can be misconstrued because we have different perceptions of them. And we want to be liked. We don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And so we aren't clear with people. To me, what has really helped in my communication, both verbal and written, is to explain it like you explain it to a kid. Especially when the conversation's hard, like just dumb it down. Of course, you don't want to be condescending, but
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And dumb it down. And even just what you said, like, I know you were simplifying, but sometimes short and sweet is way better than long and drawn out. And also, you didn't skirt the issue. I think what you were describing there is someone who really didn't want to say what the issue was.
Yep, exactly. And I think we do it from a place of good intention. You don't want to hurt their feelings, but
not at all. All right, fourth reason you suck at being a leader: micromanagement. You are a control freak. How have you seen this played out, Andy?
Yeah, I think the root of this is, we use a big word, is vulnerability. We get into a leadership role and we want things to be good, right, and perfect. Again, this comes from a good place of trying to do the right thing. And so some of the micromanagers I've seen or have worked with or helped, some of the hardest working people that I know, they are wanting perfection. But how definition of vulnerability that I like is just uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. That comes from Brene Brown. But having the skill to be vulnerable is allowing your team to mess up. Just got to make sure it doesn't sink the ship. You don't want them to mess up too bad. But if we want to put our thumb on everything, usually it's a deep internal me problem. And so I think learning to be okay with that risk is going to be some of the best thing you can do for your people.
Man, that's really good. And I think it leads right into the fifth reason that you suck at being a leader is avoiding discomfort. I think it's kind of funny. This is kind of like the fifth reason, but it's also embedded in all of the first 4 reasons, right? You don't care enough because feelings and emotions and caring is hard and uncomfortable. So you're avoiding discomfort by not caring. Demonstrating empathy, that's a skill, but sometimes it makes us feel things that are harder than not feeling things when we actually put ourselves in someone's shoes and try to understand. Same with those garbage communication skills you were saying. That person wasn't having that hard conversation because it was uncomfortable. And then micromanagement, there are certain people in the world that feel really uncomfortable letting other people have any modicum of control. And so all of these things are kind of ways to avoid discomfort. But I want you to double click on this one. Why is avoiding discomfort so detrimental when it comes to being a leader?
I'll give you a little experience that I've had. When I was in high school, when the teacher would ask us to do public speaking or like a presentation, I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. I'll take a 0. And the teacher would say, well, you're going to get an F. I'm like, true. I mean, clearly, I'm still not doing it. And I got into HR later in my life, and I look at my life now, and I do public speaking as a career. They aren't huge crowds, but what happened? What changed? And what changed is I was forced to just do it. And what I believe happens when you just do it is you give your brain, especially your subconscious mind, you give it data that these scary things aren't going to kill you. And so when we have uncomfortable conversations or we have to public speak, what happens is our brain tells us this is a threat. It might kill you. And it does like physical things to your body. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your pupils dilate, and you go into like this fight or flight. So when we have these hard conversations, we get really nervous and our voice kind of shakes. Our body is telling us, run, run, run. But if a little bit of practice and getting some experience, you can give your brain enough information to say, hey, this actually isn't that scary. And that adrenaline rush doesn't come every time. I don't know if I answered your question on why discomfort's avoidance detrimental, but
I know, but I mean, I think that's phenomenal. I think that's a great way to cap off that article, because if any one of these 5 skills or 5 things makes you uncomfortable, give your brain a new data point. Next time you feel like not addressing an issue head on, just address the issue head on. Give your brain a data point that it didn't kill you. Like the relationship didn't break. Like your brain was telling you this is going to go terribly. Well, look, it was hard, but it didn't actually go terribly. And in fact, it brought us to a better spot. I think that's a phenomenal approach to thinking about doing hard things, is I'm giving my brain another data point. And if I give it enough, these things just won't be scary anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's different for everybody. I think for some people, being clear isn't so bad, but it's a little more awkward to show that you care. And for other people, vice versa. So I think the best communicators just learn to reduce their skill deficiency, or they learn to grow in the areas that they suck.
Love it. I have one more question for you before we start wrapping things up. And this is, if you had one piece of advice for someone who's not yet in leadership, but aspires to become a leader, what advice would you give them?
It's a good question. I would read the book, The Motive by Patrick Lencioni. That book talks about the hard parts of leadership, and it will help open your eyes to what you're getting into. Because I think when most people take a foreman role or a leadership role, they don't realize all the hard things. You know, they look at the pay raise and the truck and the cool office and the title, but they don't think about these 5 things, you know, giving hard feedback and showing people that you care, and the stress and the headache. So I think that would be my one piece of advice. One piece of advice on the lines of communication, really simply, is just learning how to listen. I think fundamentally that one skill can take somebody's communication and 10x it.
Love it. Read The Motive and learn to listen. That is very actionable, awesome advice. So Andy, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. If people are interested in taking their team to the next level or taking themselves as a leader to the next level, how do they engage with Mavix Coaching, and how do they reach out to you?
Yeah. The quickest way would just be going to my website. There's a contact page there, or you can go to my LinkedIn and message me there too. There's a lot of content on LinkedIn too. You don't got to pay for it. You can go check that out.
It's awesome. And then if they read on your blog, it's mavixcoaching.com. If they read on your blog and they're like, this is something I really need, what sort of class opportunities and coaching opportunities do you offer if they are interested in those things?
Yeah. I have a one-on-one coaching program that's would be just for an individual. Who I work with most is teams. And so I would go into a company. The core offer that I have is typically it's a 4-day class. It doesn't have to be 4 days back to back. And on the back of that, I would meet with individuals one-on-one and help them implement what they learned in those classes. And I'm available to travel all over the country too, so I do lots of that.
That's awesome. Andy, this has been such a cool conversation. If you're interested in reaching out to Andy and learning more, it's mavixcoaching.com. That's Mavix coaching.com. Andy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for hopping on the podcast today.